Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sports Talk with Krish. I'm your host, Krish Verma, and today I'm here with Dr. Dirt, Tim Wilkinson. How are you doing,
I'm
sir?
doing great.
Very excited to have you on the show. Tim Wilkinson here has competed in several big tournaments like Wimbledon, and I'm very excited to hear about your outlook on tennis, what you've done throughout your career, and what you've done throughout your post career, sir. I'm very excited to have you here.
Okay.
I wanted to start you off with your first question: Is what initially drew you to tennis, and when did you realize you want to become a pro athlete?
Okay. Well, I grew up in Shelby, North Carolina, which is a small town outside of Charlotte, where we're living now. Um, Very small town, but back when I was a young child, it was a very big tennis town. So a lot of people in Shelby played tennis, including my mom and dad. So they got me playing. There's a picture of me, walking around with diapers on. So I was walking. So I guess I was maybe 2 years old. I've got a little ping pong paddle, so they had me standing next to the court at least while they played. So it was in my family. And I played other sports, as a very young teenager, 13 years old. But then right about that age, I gave up everything else, baseball and basketball, and just started playing tennis year round. So I guess that's when I decided I want to be a professional player. But at 13, you don't really understand what professional means, But I wanted to be good enough that I gave up all the other things I like to just play tennis. So probably from 13 is when I became all out tennis player.
Well, for you to figure that out at 13 years old, because some players it can take to like late high school, even college, some players, for you to find that so easy, it really came naturally to you then.
Yeah, and I still, that's still my main thing in my life. I mean, I do other things, but even today, I went hit against the backboard for 20 minutes just because I like doing it and a little
Right.
bit of exercise. So probably aren't too many people that started it, walk around in a diaper with a ping pong paddle, still hitting the backboard at 65 years old. But yeah, you're exactly right. I just fell into something that I love, consciously and sometimes subconsciously. So I was lucky.
So you reached the fourth round of Wimbledon three times in your pro career. What made that tournament so special for you?
Well, first, that's a pretty good statistic. I didn't even remember that, but that's good. you know, um, well, Wimbledon's obviously on grass courts, and I'm left-handed, and so the swing of the ball with your left hand is effective anyway. But the grass courts really takes that spin, and so it becomes a real weapon. Number one, and I like to come to the net and play volleys. Now, nowadays, even on grass courts, the pros don't play volleys that often. But when I played, it was a lot of volleying. You could be very successful up there. Now the ball goes so fast that they can hit it right by you. So
Yeah.
you got to really pick your spots to come in. But the ball wasn't going quite as fast when I played. So if you're up to the net, you had a chance to pick it off. So I think those two things, sort of technically, strategically helped me. But when I grew up, when I was a young player, like the Australian were the people that dominated tennis worldwide, and so those were like my favorite players growing up. And Australia was all grass courts, pretty much all
Right.
grass courts. If I've ever watched videos or saw pictures of them, playing, it'd always be on grass courts. So not that I ever got to play on grass courts in North Carolina way back then, but it was sort of in my mind. I was sort of psyched up about grass courts and pretty excited about it. So that probably helped a little bit subconsciously.
So how did you mentally prepare for matches against top-ranked opponents like McEnroe, Connors? How would you could say physically as well, but how did you just prepare for those big-time matches?
Right. Well, I think two things. First, for everybody, and I tell this for a lot of times, the kids or people I'm coaching now, competitive players. What I would do right before the match starts. The umpire or the not the umpire, the manager or the behind the scenes say, "Hey, you guys are on court in 5 minutes." And just at that point, I have to go through whoever I was playing, whether it's a very top player or a mid-level player. Hey, they're still pros, so they're very, very good. I just go through my mind like the three possible scenarios that happen to match. Number one, you can get ahead, and that's great. But I tell myself, hey, if you get ahead, just point by point, point by point. Don't start thinking about the next match because there may not be a next match if you do that, just point by point. The other situations you might fall behind. And you don't want to prepare to fall, think or at least make that happen, be worrying about it too much, but it does happen quite often. You get behind. And then I tell myself, hey, if you get behind, just point by point, keep pushing, make them finish the match. Don't just check out and give it to them. And then the third thing can happen is, it's neck and neck all the way to the end of the third set. And then it's sort of like a basketball game. There's so many ups and downs, that you can get down if you were at match point and then went down. Now the other guy's got match point, but hey, just keep going because maybe he'll blow his match point. So anyway, I would just take a little bit of time. This is like 30 seconds in your head. You can do that to prepare for those three scenarios. Then when you play as some of the very best players, I mean, yeah, they were super, super good. And it was very difficult. I can't remember exactly the guys you mentioned. I did beat a few of those guys. I can't remember some of the ones you mentioned, but of that level, it's very difficult to beat them. But a lot of times they would just feast on the lower players trying to play above themselves and just make many, many, many errors and sort of give them the match. So you just have to play your own game and hope that that's good enough to beat them. Don't try to say, oh, I'm playing John McEnroe, I got to play 30% better than I normally do, because you're actually going to play probably 10% worse by trying to do that. So you just got to play your regular game, and I could play close to them pretty much every match. So maybe that particular day he'd be off a little bit, or the situation is good for me and I could beat him. He was one guy I never beat, so that wasn't happening. But maybe some of the other ones that happened.
So would you agree that tennis is more of a mentally challenged sport in a way?
Well, it's both. I mean, it's you've got to be. It's very physically challenging. At all levels, really.
Right.
Because if you're really, really good, it's crazy physically challenged, but you're also in crazy good condition. And if you're mid-level, it's still very, very challenging physically, but in your mid-level shape, so you get tired, and so you have to have the physical. Um, and so, but the mental is very important also. I wouldn't say it's more mental. A lot of people sort of say that, but if they played at a high level, it's like you're not going to get to the level to show your mental ability if you're not physically super, super strong. So, I'd say you need both, definitely.
So another thing I would ask you is the conditioning, right? When you're playing your professional career, that was probably at a lot higher quality than maybe what you do in your post career. So if I could ask you, how did you transition from your professional career to your post career?
Well, just on the physical training, I played like for a long time because I started playing. I finished right from high school. I didn't go to college. I went right from high school to playing professional tennis. So like the minor leagues of baseball, we call them the satellite tour back then. I think now they
Okay.
call it like they change the name every couple of years, see the Futures Tour or the ITF Tour. But there's about 4 levels of professional tennis. You see everybody's got to start at the first level. So right out of high school, I started playing at that lowest level. And it was tough back then, but I mean the depth wasn't as bad, strong or good, or it wasn't as deep. However you would say that, good or bad. I guess if you're playing now, it's bad. But there's just so many good players now. It takes a long time to get up to that high level. But back then, I like within a year, I was able to play at Wimbledon. Okay, I was able to get up to like the top 100, which is very difficult to do now. And that was at that time the physical training. It was just like, yeah, it's like every single day. I mean, everything. You obviously paid attention to what you ate. You paid attention to your rest. Your physical training, your tennis practice, your stretching, and all that. Your hydration. I mean, even like what you did resting. If I had a match, I wouldn't go like swimming or read too much because it just felt like that would sort of drain me. So every single aspect of your life is consumed for winning that match. And then when you finish, doing that, I haven't run anything that's that consuming. Because even I do some business things, which is great, but it's not like you're going to win or lose in that 1 hour time period. It's a lot more stretched out. The situations you're going to maybe win or lose, but it's going to take weeks or months or a couple of years to find out if you win or lose. Whereas everything's so much more encapsulated in a short period of time in professional sports, just like tennis. So, that was sort of a transition I had to learn how it's not quite so exact. So, my physical training is not near as intense as it was, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still probably pretty good for someone my age and stuff. I still train, exercise every day basically and stuff because it's the thing I do the best. So
So that
you
love
always
for
do the thing you
yeah,
do the
okay.
best. Yeah.
So that love
So
for tennis. So
running
yeah,
around and jumping up and down, I can do that. So yeah, I'll keep doing that. Yeah.
that's good then. So you have a court here at the Palisades Country Club called Dr. Dirt, and you're known for your tremendous play on clay court. So what makes that surface so special for you?
Well, now I like it because it's a lot easier on your legs than a hard court.
Mm.
We have hard courts all over the world, a lot in the United States, actually more in the United States than probably anywhere else I've been. China actually has a lot of hard courts, but most of the rest of the world is clay courts. So I sort of grew up on both. So as far as playing, I playing to win, I
Mhm.
can play about the same on clay or hard courts, but particularly now, the clay court's a lot easier on my body, so I enjoy doing that a lot more. Um, I think the reason for my success that I would have on clay courts, because you mentioned my nickname, Dr. Dirt, is part of that's because I just tried so hard. I'd run for everything and try no matter what. If the ball's far away from me, I'd dive for it. And it was clay courts, I get all dirty, so
Right.
it's Dr. Dirt. Um, and that, on hard courts or grass courts, the opponent hits a really hard shot. It just skids off the court and it's by you. You can't even get to it. But the clay court, it slows down by when it bounces, all the clay granules slows the thing down. So you have a little bit more time to run and get the ball back and play defense and extend the point and try to, break them down. And I was very willing to do that. So that's probably, why I would have any success on clay courts.
So looking back at your professional tennis career and some of your most defining moments that you've had, what would you say was the biggest? And also, something else I want to ask you that is how did it feel to get into the North Carolina Tennis Hall of Fame?
Right. Well, first thing when I played for a long time, I mentioned I went right from high school to professional tennis. I played, the ATP tour till I was about 32. That's like 15 years. And then even after that, I was still basically supporting myself and my family by playing tennis. There's like team tennis. I went over and played German club. They have this club tennis in Germany that's like professional. Then I played team tennis for a couple of years, and I played like the senior tour. So I really played till I was 42. So,
Wow.
17 to 42, I really playing professional tennis was my living. And I won some tournaments here and there. But one thing that was really interesting to me, if you win a tournament somewhere, especially someone like me, I was good, but I was like a mid-level player. Maybe the top guys win so many tournaments that they really remember the really big ones. But if you only win a few tournaments, it doesn't matter what city it was. It could be, I'm not going to say any city, so people think, oh, you're making fun of my city. But a city that's not so famous or anything like that is so exciting. If you win a tournament there, it's like, oh, I love this place. It's my favorite city in the world because you won. It was a big deal for you. So that was sort of, that was interesting and stuff. But I'd say my favorite wins, or I didn't even win, but it's getting to the quarterfinals of the U.S. Open. And that was like the farthest I got. You mentioned I got to the fourth round of Wimbledon a few times, but that's still not the quarterfinals. I think it's one more round. And so that was good. Getting to the quarterfinals is good. There's 8 people do it every year, so it's very doable for a professional player. But what happened that year is every other single American player lost by the second round. So, CBS or whoever was broadcasting that year is like, oh my goodness, we've got 6 guys from Sweden and Czechoslovakia and 1 guy from Spain and 1 American guy, and no one's going to want to watch in the United States. So they really built me up a lot. If it had been a normal year, you would have had Connors and McEnroe, and then that would have been a little footnote. But they lost out that year early. So they gave me I got like as much publicity in that like 2-week period than maybe the rest of my career combined. It was sort of, that was sort of cool because I sort of, feel the situation like those top players have with all that attention on you at the big tournaments. So that was a good experience. Probably the most memorable would be that time period, that week.
And now, if I can ask you for guys that are trying to get into pro tennis and trying to break that circuit, what advice can you give to those players?
Well, technical, I can give them some, not super technical, but sort of broad technical because I just came back from coaching some really good players for about, well, actually 2 6-week periods. And I was watching them play a lot of matches. These are, 16, 17-year-old players who want to become professional. And they were playing all these other people the same age. So it was just exactly like the people you're talking about. And I noticed about 4 or 5 things I picked up that all these players were doing in these matches I watched, both the players I was coaching and the players they were playing against. So I'd say number one, the way the game is now, the ground strokes are so powerful that you've got to really be able to move along the baseline really well and get those really good shots back well. It's not good enough just to barely get there and plop the ball over because they'll just put it away. So you've got to get over there and play it back. And Djokovic, I think, is a great, well, all of them, but he's a really good example of that. You know, how he stretches out and still hits a good shot off these really good balls. So you're moving along the baseline. And then the other part of that is, how are you playing your shots? Are you making good decisions when you're changing direction? I think that's a really big one. Second one is, you really have to get an advantage on your serve. The female pros are getting an advantage on their serve, and they're not as good as servers typically as the men pros are. So either sex, if you want to be, it used to be women had weaker serves at the pro level, but now either side, you've got to get some kind of advantage on your serve. Either they don't get some back, or they come back so weakly you have an easy, shot to play away. Then I think the other two things are a little bit back to the mental, that we talked about earlier. One is that if you're ahead in a match, you've got to be able to close it out. Now, no one's going to close out every single match. I think the French Open is a great example. On both sides, really, but particularly on the men's sides. I mean, Sinner had match point and lost, but of course he's still, those are going to be two of the best players in history of the game. So, it's understandable. But if he can't do it every single time, then no one can do it every single time. But he does it probably 90% of the time. When he's there, he closes it out. Really, the only way, I mean, that's a difficult thing to do. You feel a lot of pressure on yourself. The only way you can really learn how to do that is just playing a lot of matches. And the times you are successful, hey, why did that work? Why was I able to close out the match? The times you aren't successful, like, why couldn't I close it out? Did my serve break down? I got too nervous. I got tired, and then you can try to work on those things. Then the last thing that I think is really important is when you get behind in a match, because again, that does happen probably half the time you get behind, half the time you get ahead, half the time you get behind. You got to stay a problem solver. I call it a problem solver. And the problem is, how do I win this match? Because tennis is an individual sport. There's some coaching, allowed during matches, but still you're out there by yourself, and you can even see at the pro level, sometimes they get so mad. Yeah, they're out there, they're still trying, but they're so mad that they're not really thinking, hey, how do I win this match? How do I win this match? They're running around and hitting balls, but they've lost a little bit mentally. So you've got to be able to train yourself that, yeah, when you're ahead, it has its own pressures, but you're definitely going to be a problem solver, but when you get behind, it's easy to check out. So those are the four things I think you got to really make sure you work on.
Well, Mr. Wilkinson, I really appreciate your time and for taking this interview. Tim Wilkinson right here, Dr. Dirt at the Palisades Country Club. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.